has to be something with his computer settings.
I'm Commissioner Christian Leinbach, and I want to welcome you to the Berks County COVID-19 weekly update. Our topic is Census 2020. We're thrilled to have a great panel. Commissioner Barnhart will be introducing that panel a little bit later in the program. Just a couple housekeeping items. First of all, if you would like to participate, you may be watching this via BCTV or Microsoft Teams live event, or possibly on our Facebook Live or YouTube live page. We welcome your questions. If you have a question or a comment, it must be germane to the topic, which is Census 2020. And we ask you that you post it, including your first and last name and the municipality where you reside. If you are from the media, you are welcome to ask more than one question. We just ask for your name and the media you represent. If you post your question or in YouTube comments or Facebook comments, we do have staff that are looking at those posts and will immediately share them with us. Census 2020 is a very important issue, and let me tell you, the beginning of this year, the county, the city of Reading, our community was fully on board to get a real count. We want to count everybody. That job got a lot harder come COVID-19 and the pandemic. And I'm sure you're going to hear a lot about that, but we still have a strong team that is committed to counting everyone. I want to thank everyone on the call for your involvement, but I know there's a lot of people that have been the feet on the street, literally, helping us get this job done. Let's not rest till we take it across the finish line and we count everyone. With that, I'd like to turn the program over to Commissioner Michael Rivera.
Yes, thank you very much, Commissioner Leinbach. I want to first of all thank our participants that are on the program today. Thank you for all the work that you're doing. Also, something that I do want to highlight and thank Mayor Eddie Moran and his administration, and Jamal and the team there at City Hall, together with the Reading School District and Dr. Yamil Sanchez. The city has been very, very proactive in reference to the census. They have weekly meetings. They have a list, a plan that they have laid out, and it's been going on for the last few months now. They have something going on every week until the end of September, till when we can have people complete the census. They have been working together closely with the Reading School District to be able to do the most outreach without so much duplication of efforts, because the city and the school district are working together. So I want to thank the city and the school district as well for working together, for working hard, getting people on board, staff on board, volunteers on board, and doing what needs to get done to get the numbers up. So thank you very much. Keep up the good work, and I look forward to hearing all the information on here. This is very, very, very valuable information, and we need to make sure that as many people as can get this information, because the clock is ticking and the time is running out on the census.
Thank you very much. Before I turn the meeting over to Commissioner Barnhart, I want to thank him for his leadership on this issue. He's been involved and leading on this into early last year in advocating that the county put additional dollars in, which I believe we put an initial amount, and you can share what that amount was, but then earlier this year, you recommended additional funding, which we fully supported. But Commissioner Barnhart has been the point person for county government on Census 2020, and I personally want to thank him for his leadership, and we will turn the program over to my friend and colleague, Commissioner Kevin Barnhart.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you to my colleagues for those nice words, Commissioner Leinbach and Commissioner Rivera, and to our panel and those who are viewing today. This is a critically important, probably right now, fighting the virus. It's probably the #2 most important thing out there in our community right now. And we have an esteemed group of panelists today. We're going to be reviewing some of the information to this point and what we really need to do to drive this across the finish line. I would really like to introduce a great panel. First, we have Paul Jansen, Director of the Center for Excellence in Local Government at Albright and member of the Berks County Complete Count Committee. We have Isabel Monterosa, Publicity and Volunteer Coordinator for the Berks County Complete Count Committee. We also have Steve Shope, Supervisory Partnership Specialist with the Philadelphia Regional Census Center, and Dr. Yamil Sanchez, Chief Administrative Officer of the Reading School District. Good afternoon, everyone. And just by way of a little history, I want to kick off this program by saying we actually started in October of 2017. So people don't think we just suddenly decided to start counting people in July and August of this year. Mike Golembeski, one of our transportation planners and modelers in our planning office, said, look, we do this every 10 years and we've been doing this for his 30 years of being here. But he said he really needed somebody to kind of take point and be the community liaison or spokesperson. And the music stopped and I didn't have a chair. So I became the chair of the Complete Count Committee. And I tell you, I look back in pride how we pulled this together. Commissioner Leinbach alluded to, and Paul will get into more details about the funding mechanism that got us started. But we started really intense meetings way before there was ever any other county, or for that matter, probably state, who were really focusing on the census, because we were being driven by Mike Golembeski and his efforts to try to get these counts correct. What we started out with was 7 subcommittees, and they're still active to this day. They are Business and Labor, headed by Derek Harris from the Chamber, Government, which I chaired, Community-Based Organizations, Berks Alliance with David Myers, Education, Dr. Jill Hackman from BCIU and Dr. Christina Fuel, Religious Institutions, Michael Calker, Latino Outreach, Mike Toledo from the Hispanic Center, and Publicity and Media, Heather Adams from BCTV. So really, we pulled together, we felt, every aspect of the community to try to make sure how critically important this is and get the message out. This Complete Count Committee does not do the counting. We do the marketing and promotion and the outreach to get people to understand how critically important this is. Why are we here? The national average of undercount has been for many decades 4%. That equates to the Berks County number being at least 17,000 people undercounted. 17,000 people based on $1.5 trillion of federal dollars that come back from Washington to the states across the country. $2,100 a person over 10 years. Remember, the census is every 10 years. Over $351 million that Berks County missed out on in the last 10 years. And you think about these numbers. Medical Assistance Program, $311 billion. Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program, $71 billion. Medicare Part B, $70 billion. The list goes on. Highway planning, Pell Grants, school lunch programs. Any program you can imagine, 132 of them that come out of Washington, D.C. are based on strong, complete, accurate numbers. Now, there is another benefit to this. It's reapportionment. It's rearranging the representation in our states across the country. But this committee really didn't focus on the political aspect. It focused on what Reading and Berks County needs to grow and prosper. And that's that money coming back to us from Washington, D.C. And one other thing of note, as of today, the national average of actual counts thus far is 64%. Pennsylvania is 66.9. Berks County, thank you, 72.5%. Reading is at 51.1. So much of this focus today and moving on till September 30th is what we can do in some of our smaller boroughs out in the county have some undercounts, but really to focus on Reading and the people here, because obviously Reading could utilize a lot of this federal money as well as the county. So with that, I just want to kind of preface the whole thing and thank everyone, especially Mike Golembeski, for his efforts to really get this thing kicked off. And I want to start with Dr. Yamil Sanchez, I apologize, from the Reading School District, because I think you really have a lot to cover while kids are virtually learning or coming back to school with distancing, and really the efforts that's going to drive this home for us by September 30th to get 100%. Dr. Sanchez.
So thank you very much, Commissioner Barnhart. I really appreciate the opportunity to share with all of you, especially all the listeners, our collaborative efforts. And I will yield to the rest of the experts on the panel to talk about the purpose of the census and the information that's collected. But I do, in my answers, will be focusing on what we're doing at the district to ensure that there is a community success as it relates to the count. For us, it's important that every resident in Reading especially, but of course throughout Berks County, is counted during the 2020 census, because it's going to help shape the future of what we call our Red Knights, our students, not only in Reading, but throughout the 18 school districts. For the Reading School District, however, you're going to hear this in my comments throughout this conversation, is that we came up with a theme. Our kids are counting on you, and they're counting on a complete count for some very specific things. The messaging that we're using with our families, especially, is grounded on what does this count mean, in real time. Well, it means a funded school breakfast and lunch program. It means having an ESL, a robust ESL and special education program. And for those of you who don't know, the Reading School District is over 88% Spanish-speaking families. So the ESL program is a big resource that we rely on. So a complete count will also allow for after-school programs to be offered, and for the Title I funding and grants, which supports lots of our programs throughout the school. Additionally, and this is where I'll yield to the other people on the panel, it helps with our public transportation, our affordable housing, and access to hospitals. In today's climate, where many of us are afraid to be in the same room with other people, healthcare is something that's very, very important. And these dollars will have direct implications to making sure that our children and our families are safe.
Wonderful. So, Paul, take us through the funding, the budget, and the hiring of Isabel and Delcy. Take us a little bit down memory road, but not too far down memory road.
Well, thank you, Commissioner Barnhart. CELG, the Center for Excellence in Local Government, is involved with all 72 municipalities in Berks County, which makes us uniquely positioned to be able to communicate effectively across the county, as opposed to certain aspects. The other part of it is the center has been involved in the last 3 censuses. Initially with John Kramer, my predecessor at CELG, who started in 2000, or who took on the 2000 census, and John hired Donna Reed, current city council person for the city of Reading, as a assistant to handle that effort. Then in 2010, John was still the chairman, or the director for CELG, and he again took on the task of coordinating. This time, however, he teamed up with one of our panelists today, Isabel Monterosa. And so it's not often that you can say that you've had an employee who worked for you for almost 2 years, took a 9-year break, and then came back to work for you. But Isabel has done that. So I'm going to mention her again in a moment. So in 2012, I came on as the director for the Center for Excellence in Local Government, and have managed it during these last 8 years. The census is not new to me, though, because I've been in municipal management since early 1980s. So this is my 5th census that I have coordinated, much like we're talking about the city of Reading. I coordinated for the municipalities that I did back through the years for 1980, 1990, 2000, 2010, and now 2020. So we've been working at this for, as Commissioner Barnhart said, since late 2018, and in the fall of 2018, we actually got the Complete Count Committee set up to be organized, and so that committee is staffed by over 70 volunteers representing the various committees that that Commissioner Barnhart mentioned. But our real work started on April 1st of 2019, which happened to be a couple of weeks after we hired Isabel for her second tenure with the complete count process. So we had a reception on April 1st, 2019, and it was attended by over 70 people. We had volunteers plus other people attending. And so we worked very hard from April 1st on. Again, Isabel came on board, and our final staff person that was supporting this effort was Delcy Fernandez, and she has been with us since June of 2019. So this is not a new team. We've been working at this for a while. Kevin asked me to talk a little bit about funding. The original budget for the effort was $140,000. County commissioners put in $25,000. The Berks County Office of Community Development put in $25,000. The City of Reading put in $10,000. The Berks Alliance put in $30,000, and then the Community Foundation through the BB&T fund contributed $50,000. Now, that got us to April 1st and was going to fund us to the end of July with a final report. But as we've talked about, COVID-19 has really impacted this. So the County Community Development Office, through the efforts of Kevin and the commissioners, has now kicked in an additional $27,000 so that we can carry this effort into the end of September. So this is not a new program. You know, nobody turned the light on March 1st of 2020 and said, hey, we got to do a census. We've been working at it. Delcy and Isabel have been throughout the county for well over a year. And we're just really pleased that they're able to stay with it till we get to the end of this effort. So with that, Commissioner Barnhart, I'll turn it over to your next panelist.
Thank you very much, Paul. So I want to ask the panelists to discuss the purpose of the census and the importance of having everyone in Berks counted. What is the information that's actually collected by the census and what's it used for? That's always a big question. And how does it affect federal funding Berks receives? So I'd like to start with Steve, Supervisory Partnership Specialist with the Regional Census Center. Steve?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Barnhart. You know, I'm a historian personally, and I, you know, when I hear about the importance of the census, you know, we're surrounded in society by people wanting to collect data, and surveys are everywhere, but this goes back to the beginning. The importance of the decennial census just cannot be understated. You know, anybody who appreciates the freedoms that we have in this country, you know, when our founding fathers framed our Constitution, before they wrote anything about a freedom of speech or a freedom of religion or a freedom of press or a right to bear arms, they wrote about a census. So in Article 1, Section 2 of the United States Constitution, they determined we had to have a census every 10 years so that we can count the people, so that we can make sure we have accurate representation in Congress. And when we fast forward to present day, and as you've already alluded to, you know, the data we'll collect during this 2020 census is going to inform decisions that include everything from how we distribute $675+ billion every year to states and communities. You've outlined just a short list of some of those programs with WIC and SNAP and Head Start, school breakfasts. I mean, but everything from highways to hospitals. It would be impossible for any individual to live life and not be affected in one way or another by how census data impacts their life, at least through funding. But it even goes beyond funding. Any city that's, well, you know, my job in the private sector is a business and economic development consultant. So I use census data all the time. When I go into a city that's growing and prospering, I see a city or a county that knows how to use data. And development is only as good as data, and really only as good as accurate data. So every 10 years, there's not another survey like this that's so comprehensive that it counts every single person living in the United States. Not just counts them, but counts them in the geography where they live so that they can be appropriated to the state and the community so that the funds can follow that, so that the programs that are needed to sustain that person and their community are appropriated properly. I really, the importance of it is probably one of the biggest battles and one of the greatest strengths that the complete count committees and partners like Berks County and City of Reading and school districts bring to the census every 10 years is that sometimes the average Joe doesn't understand the importance of it. And at the same time, may have some concerns about how their data might be used if they respond to the 2020 census. And so having partners out there that have that established relationship, that trusted voice in the community, that can educate people about why this is important, how it affects their lives, the benefit of getting a complete and accurate count, and at the same time addressing their concerns that their personally identifiable information is protected by Title 13, it's never going to be shared, really goes a long way in improving not only the accuracy of the count, but the speed of the count, because we see our operations move quicker when we've got those partners and networks on the ground in the communities that are laying those foundations. And I tell you, we couldn't be happier with the work that you've done there in Berks County and the City of Reading.
Thank you so much, Steve, for that. Isabel, any other your thoughts on how important this is to Reading and Berks County?
Definitely would like to piggyback on what Steve was discussing, and really at this time, and I've said it before, with 2020, it's going to be a year for the record. So I'm telling everybody now that's reluctant that wouldn't you want to be counted on the year 2020 that you were here? So that's actually helped with some people that may have expressed some reluctance just for a variety of reasons that Steve actually touched on. Usually if I get them with the historical purposes, they realize that yes, it is part of history. But yes, I can't echo enough what he mentioned, that for our purposes, it really is the trust factor, and we can see that because we have had a great response already, but we're finding some challenges in those areas where some people may be fearful. And so for us, it's really to get to those people that may not know about the importance and really break it down to why it's important to them. Because a lot of people just seem to think that even still that it's just about being counted and that we just want to have dollars come into the community, but they don't really understand what it means for them. They think it's going to go to the building downtown or something. No, we really break it down to these services that you utilize, and then we try to really customize it for them. So that's what our mission has been, to bring it to each person and to each family member and to let them know that this is why it's important to them.
Thank you, Isabel. Dr. Sanchez, what does this mean to you in your position at the school district? I think you're muted.
I'm sorry, I'm calling from the phone, so I have to wait for it to mute me.
That's okay.
So just want to echo what I said earlier. Our district, one of 18 in the county, depends, I want to say heavily, on all types of supports to be able to meet the holistic needs of kids. So we work really hard to make sure that we have a strong teaching academic team. But the reality is that many of the families that we serve are coming with a significantly high other types of needs. And it's not the role, nor does the district have the resources to provide all of those needs. So we need to make sure that we have the financial, when I say we, now I mean the collective we, beyond district. How does our county, how does our city provide the wraparound services related to the social, emotional, to food needs, to the basic needs that families come knocking on our door, and we need to make sure that we turn to a partner in these dollars to make sure that those partners are able to offer. So for us, it's the difference between academic success and failure. So that's really important.
And it's become abundantly clear during COVID-19, hasn't it? How critically important these resources are.
So we've all experienced this. We all know the lines that have been formed. We've been watching the news. I was personally out there with the Reading School District staff when we were distributing food, and we had lines around our building. When we had, I had seniors who were coming in their walkers to get a box of food, and myself would have to figure out how do we help get them into the cars. When parents are clamoring to get, the meals for their kids, not only for the day, but for the week. So there is there is a real need here in Reading and Berks County to make sure that we're successful with this census.
Thank you, Doctor. Paul, you get the bat cleanup. Bring us home. Go ahead.
So, thank you, Commissioner Barnhart. So every year, the federal government distributes what is called block grant funds, and they are just money that is distributed to each county based on its population. For Berks County during the last decade, every person who is counted in the population, and right now, the population for Berks County is listed as $421,164. So every person who is in Berks County means that we get somewhere around, it's close, $2,100 per year for every person that is counted here. So what that means is for every person who's not counted, we don't get that $2,100. That adds up to millions and millions of dollars over the next decade. Just recently, one of the real important aspects of this came very clear when the COVID-19 funding from the federal government came out, and they immediately transferred block grant dollars to any of the municipalities in the country that had 500,000 people. Well, you can see we're at 421, so we're $80,000 short. So counties like Lancaster and Chester and Berks and Bucks County and Montgomery County, counties close to us, received upwards of $500 million very early in this process. When everybody was starting to get their first stimulus checks, those counties got $500 million. Berks County was just notified about a month and a half ago that because they didn't have $500,000, the state was going to divvy up around $138 million. So those 80,000 people impacted Berks County well over $300 million. That's a huge impact. So if we can get our population in this county up over 500,000 people, the next time something like this happens, maybe we'll be a block grant recipient. But right now, nobody in Berks County got direct money from the federal government. And there's an awful lot of states that all of the counties got direct recipient money, and all of the larger cities got direct recipient money. So we got impacted tremendously. So that's just one of those programs that your population comes out with an automatic block grant back in March if we would have had the 500,000 people. So hopefully that helps everybody understand, but it's millions of dollars that we receive in multiple programs, over 200 programs. But for every person we don't get counted, it means millions and millions and millions of dollars over the 10 year that we're not going to be able to receive and distribute through programs that are so essential to our residents.
Everyone counts. So let's talk about the response rates that I highlighted at the beginning, nationally, state, Berks, and Reading. So where do we stand and measure up even today and in past years? Paul, you want to take that one? You're muted.
I'm happy to take it. So in past years, Berks County has been right around 70% in its response rate, and the city of Reading has been right around 60%. And that is in the direct response rate. And that's critical because what happens is the Census Bureau then sends people out and they actually knock on doors and they fill out percentages of the residents that still haven't been counted. In 2010, both for Berks County and for the city of Reading, the percentage went up right around 7%. So if you start with a complete count of 71% and you add 7, then you're at 78%. Obviously, when you get to the end, you want to be at 100. And I think the Census Bureau does some math to work out some of those areas that aren't counted, but that's where we were. This year, however, Berks County is slightly over 70% today. The city of Reading is slightly over 50% today. If the city of Reading was at 60%, I would be happy to tell you that Berks County would be the #1 response county in the Commonwealth. Right now, we're in the top 5. But if we had the city of Reading's count up to 60% like they were in 2010, we'd be #1 in the Commonwealth. And I'm very proud of that. I'm very proud of the effort that the commissioners and the Complete Count Committee put into this process. But as you can see, we had the same issue back in 2010 that we're having today, and that's reaching the residents in the city of Reading to make sure they understand the importance of this funding. They understand the importance of being counted, politically, what it means to them, philosophically, what it means, but it's a constitutional responsibility. Our issue right now is that we have to get that count in Reading at least up to the 61% that it was in 2010 to allow them to arrive at a population that's reasonable. There's a lot of people in the city of Reading that say because of their occupancies and so on, the actual population in Reading is closer to 100,000 people. What we think is that the housing count there is probably around 20 to 25,000 people. So you can see that if our response count is only at 50%, that means there's going to be anywhere between 10 and 12,000 doors that need to be knocked on when the census enumerators start working in the city of Reading, which they are right now, in order to get that population closer to what the occupancy permit process and the number of housing units in the city are. So it's a big task. And so now we've got to be up to it.
Isabel, same question. How does this response rate look to you presently and your experience in the past?
Well, presently, it looks a little bit daunting, as Paul mentioned, and the county looks great, but we need to get those numbers up. We do have an advantage this time, though, that we didn't have 10 years ago, and that is the ability to respond online and by telephone. So they don't have to just wait for the enumerators, and that's what we're really trying to push right now. In addition to the COVID issues and the fear factors, if we can, with our trusted voices and with getting to the community, if we can have the community self-respond, we can get those numbers up a lot higher and then not have to rely as much on the enumerators knocking on door, because there's that issue that we saw 10 years ago. People are fearful. The very concerned people are the same people that are concerned now, the same population and demographics. So for us to really see this needle move, we really need to work with our community and work on assisting them with responding and taking advantage of the fact that this is the first time that we've had internet availability and telephone availability. And then that way it can minimize those doors that Paul mentioned that need to be knocked. So, that's what we're encouraging, is really use the technology right now so that we didn't have 10 years ago.
So Steve, you're the historian on the panel. How do things look now and how they looked in the past to you?
Yeah, there's not much I would add to that conversation other than that certainly as a county, the numbers look really good, really promising, even compared to 2010. Oftentimes we find municipalities of all sizes want to look to another municipality somewhere else in the state and say, why don't our numbers look like theirs? And that's why we feel that sometimes the best comparison is to compare Berks County to Berks County. Compares Reading to Reading, what you did in 2010, what was the self-response rate then? And as it's been mentioned, the Berks County is getting ready to surpass its 2010 self-response rate. So that's phenomenal. City of Reading, not quite there yet with their 2010 self-response rate. And it's kind of typical, we see this picture where the county as a whole is doing better than the county seat or the prominent city within a county. Dauphin County has a very similar situation. I think typically you see in a city as opposed to the county, probably a higher percentage of renters, a higher percentage of more transient populations that are not homeowners. So there's a lot of factors that play into that. But again, I think Berks County as a whole is looking really good. There's some work to be done in the city of Reading, but again, the infrastructure, the network, the partners, the complete count committees that are there. I mean, I think the recipe for success is there, and I fully expect. I would mention though that the numbers that are out there are really they're only self-response numbers. So even when we're out conducting several other operations that impact and add to the overall count, they're never reflected in these self-response numbers. So as NARFU is being conducted, non-response follow-up, the enumerators that are knocking on doors, completing surveys, those numbers don't get added to that self-response rate that you see. The group quarters enumeration that we do at universities and hospitals and prisons, that those numbers never get added to the self-response rate that people see online. So it is really the challenge is to go out and to get into these communities that are having a lower self-response rate to improve that, so that as the other operations begin to move, towards meeting each other, in the middle, you get to that, as close to that 100% complete count as you can get.
That's very good information, Steve. I appreciate that. So the census deadline in normal years would have been April 1st was Census Day, and then everything gets finished up, I think, door to door by July. Due to COVID-19, we had originally been given a tentative deadline of the end of October. A few weeks ago, we found out it was moved back to the end of September. How will this impact the local efforts, and what must we do in the next 6 weeks before the deadline? Steve, would you like to guide us, since you are with the Bureau? What do we need to do with the 6-week final push?
Well, it's a two-pronged approach. It is doing everything you can to identify the low responding tracts and encourage self-response. But even with the enumerators out conducting non-response follow-up, encouraging the folks who live in Berks County to be receptive to those enumerators. Some people have concerns with COVID. We have guidelines in place that every enumerator is practicing social distancing, frequent hand sanitation, wearing the masks, and they'll, maintain a safe distance and conduct a survey with them at their doorstep without compromising either person's health or safety. So it's a two-pronged approach. You got to keep chomping at the bit with getting the self-response rate to improve, and also, again, encouraging people to be receptive to the enumerators. It's easy, I think, for people to get overly concerned when we see these headlines throughout in the news and the media that, they shortened the deadline. Oh, it compromised the complete count because now they've moved it back an entire month. I can tell you that the plan that's in place right now has every confidence that they're going to be able to speed up the count without compromising the completeness of it. I've managed these operations in the past, and when we're out recruiting folks, which we've been doing in earnest since early 2018, recruiting people for these positions in communities across America, we tell folks that, we're asking you, if you want to apply for one of these jobs, to commit to at least working 15 hours a week. That's the minimum. And so when we put out staffing authorizations for these operations, and this non-response follow-up is by far the largest operation of a decennial census, it's based on a average enumerator working 15 to 20 hours per week. So on one hand, the timeline, in a sense, was shortened in that it went from the end of October, moved back to the end of September, but we also started earlier than we had planned. The plan, with the revised plan in light of COVID, was to start everywhere August 11th, and we were active in most communities in July. So in many places, a full month early, in some places 2 weeks early. So we're making it up with that, but we also have something even more effective in place, which is providing incentives to the thousands of census workers that we've hired to work 30 and 40 hours a week as opposed to 15 and 20, so that we can accomplish, the same amount of work in this slightly, and I mean only slightly, smaller window of time.
Thank you so much. So, Isabel, let's focus a little bit on the city efforts, and you've been helping with them. They have their own complete count committee through the administration, city council. Tell us about some of those efforts to get us through the next 6 weeks.
So yes, as Commissioner Rivera mentioned, we have been meeting weekly since April. And so one of the things that we were able to do to assist the city is to, through the Berks Service Corps, have some youth workers be able to assist with various aspects to promote the census that is city specific. So we've been able to get four, 3 are currently working, one will complete next week. And then just what they're doing is working with the school district, which Dr. Sanchez will elaborate on that, but working with a variety of partners through the Reading Housing Authority to go into the different high-rise buildings through the other units that they manage and talk to their community and be able to provide information following their safety measures. We've been had MQAs, which are census workers, stationed at prominent grocery stores, particularly in the early parts of the month, so that they can have conversations and able to complete the census right there, but more a familiarity again, so that they have familiarity with those workers and then eventually complete their census forms. And they did have in July, they had Census Awareness Day on July 21st, which was comprised of all the public works, the police, the fire department, first responders. It was a nice caravan that was led by the mayor, and they stopped at a variety of strategic places that were notoriously undercounted, and were able to complete some census forms, but more importantly, be able to bring that awareness and that familiarity with a mayor that they do very much trust, and seeing behind the efforts, there's some opening up of it, which will be continued on. We kind of had to plant some seeds for some of the people that are fearful. They've seen the census, they've seen the information, and prior to all this coming down, we had buses wrapped and things like that. But again, people had told us that they see that the word census, but they weren't familiar with it. So with the city's efforts, we've been able to reach some of those populations that we may not have been able to reach before. And so right now, we're just wrapping up. There's this on the City of Reading's page, Facebook page, and on their website, they have a listing of events that they're going to be doing from now through the September 30th, which will have complete count committee workers. They'll have census workers, places where that people can complete the census and get more information. And again, a lot of that is very much focused with the school district and opening up. So I want to let Dr. Sanchez say that. But we do have a lot more efforts that are coming up, and any event that we can be at, we have people there that can talk about the census, and MQA workers that can assist with that in a confidential manner.
Dr. Sanchez? Thank you, Isabel. Dr. Sanchez? Oh, you're muted again.
So about 2 months ago, when we joined the group to figure out how we do this, we planned for several in-person efforts. At the time, it was that we had stay-at-home orders, so we knew that this was going to launch once school started. About 3 weeks ago, our board decided that we are going to be starting the year virtually. So the combination of the date being changed and not having face-to-face has forced us to go back to the drawing board and think of different, more creative ways, or figure out how we expand our social media efforts to be able to meet the goal. So wanted to share just a couple things that we've decided to do. We are going to have a back to school orientation. It's an individualized meeting with families to get them ready, in part because although we distributed 7,000 Chromebooks in the spring when this first broke out, we still have thousands of kids who need to have access to technology to be able to do their work virtually. So we're going to take the opportunity of having one-on-one meetings with families when we give them their Chromebook, provide them some resources, and at that time invite folks from the census, enumerators or MQAs, with a table outdoors as a result of COVID at 6 of our elementary schools. And we've mapped them out to be in the focus census tract areas that you've been sharing with us. So during those 4 days of individualized orientations, the folks from the census will have access to thousands of families in the focus area. Now we're also trying to figure out how do we work within the rules that are being set related to social distancing, the number of people that can be in groups. And just 2 days ago, I think it was, if not yesterday, we had a meeting where I volunteered. This was part of my first 90 days plan anyway, to be able to meet the community. We're going to have 4 face-to-face meetings, one each of the quadrants of the city, with the limited number of people that social distancing requires. And we're going to ask them to be ambassadors. So we're going to share with them the opportunity to learn more about census, get a chance to know me as the new administrator with the district, and tool them with information to then share with their family and friends, whether it's face-to-face or social media. Since we can't have 200 families from any one school together at the same time, if I can get 25, 30 families from each of the schools to come together, hear about the census, get them to fill out, but then send them home with the information they need. So that's just an example of what's going to be done differently as a result of the fact that we now have one less month to do this work.
Thank you, Dr. Sanchez. Paul, anything you feel we missed under this headline? What we push us across the finish line in the next 6 weeks?
So this is one of those tales of good news and bad news. I want to give the bad news, and then we can finish it up with good news. As I mentioned earlier, the bad news is that our self-response rate is low, and that means that if we don't get that up, the enumerators are going to have to pick up a lot more houses that are going to knock on the doors, and maybe people aren't going to answer the door or not. But the reality of this is that we have to close 12% over the next 6 weeks. That means that we have to raise that self-response rate by 2% every single week. As an example, since the end of June, since the middle of June till today, that self-response rate has only gone up a little over 4%. So that's 2 months, a little over 4%. We have 6 weeks to do 12%. So we've got to move quickly. That's the bad news. The good news is that Mayor Moran and the City Council, Managing Director Pedro Cortez, the Director for Community Development, Jamal Abadalo, they've all gotten on board, and they're talking the census. They're putting that information out in the community, and so people are hearing it now, and not just seeing it on advertisements on TV, which the Complete Count Committee did a lot of work on, and in writing, but they're actually hearing people talk about it, and that's huge. There is a dynamo in the community development office by the name of Patricia Vasquez, who is working very closely with Isabel and with Delcy in really getting the event staffed correctly. We brought on 4 additional Berks work corps individuals to support that effort, and I think the city has a couple themselves. And then the other really good news that we have here is sitting on this panel, and that's Dr. Sanchez. He's in an extremely short period of time put together a multifaceted campaign to really reach a lot of the residents that have kids in the school district. And so I anticipate that we're going to get some fairly good response out of the self-response rate just off the efforts that he's done. And so Dr. Sanchez, I can't say enough about how you dove in here and really put a program together with very little time. But that's the good news. You know, we're all out there now, and the discussion's going out there, and this forum is another way to reach out into the public to give assurance and understanding of what the purpose of the census is. So that's the bad news and the good news. And I think the good news hopefully will outweigh the bad news, and we'll get Reading over that line. And if we do, the city or the county of Berks is going to be way over the line on self-response. So that's the good news. So I hope that helps.
So thank you. So, you know, COVID-19 put a crimp in our style, and we had to come indoors for an extended period of time. But Paul alluded to events. So Isabel, events coming up that are socially distanced that we can let people know that are viewing, and the media know what's coming up in the next few weeks, so we really can get out there as much as humanly possible, recognizing the safety protocols, and really push this thing out.
Again, I'm unmuted. Okay, I'm unmuted. So there are some events. One of the ones that is coming up this weekend, South of Penn is having a cleanup event, and I believe it starts at Reading Iron Park. The cleanup events have actually been extremely successful because it brings the community leaders out, and it has various volunteers, typically from religious organizations. So it brings the community out, and while the cleanup is going on, the census workers are engaging, but they're also knocking on doors too, and then the community is there so people are able to feel more comfortable. So the cleanup event is coming up this Saturday. And again, you can go to the City of Reading on their Facebook page or their website. They have a listing of the events that are coming up. On this coming Friday, it's sold out already, but the Reading Fight and Phils are having a movie night this Friday and next Friday. This Friday's has been sold out. Again, they're limited due to social distancing. We will have a table there for volunteers. And next Friday, though, isn't sold out. So I believe next Friday is the 28th is Frozen 2. So that's an encouraging people to go out there. And if they want to complete their census, they can complete their census in that way. Oh, again, keep your ears open for when this caravan, another Census Awareness Day, is going to be happening, because that's going to be a big event, and we're planning on making sure that that's all over. The other thing is that Patricia Vasquez that Paul mentioned, she's sent out a list that the radios are going to have, radio stations locally are going to have a media day. The date has not been set up, but they're going to set it up in a way like phone banking. So as soon as we have more information, we'll get that out to you. But that's another way that the radios are going to get together. It's going to be Roomba, La Mega, and Loud 99 are going to get together, and they're going to almost have like a radiothon type of thing, and to encourage people to call in and to have like a phone bank to get that information out. So just keep an eye out on there. The one that's also very popular is Wacky Water Wednesday, which the mayor has set up starting in July, and it's going through the end of September. So every Wednesday we have census worker as well as our Berks service workers are out there. So that's a great way to engage with pockets of the community and in a fun environment that we can provide census information. And lastly, we do have through Breast Cancer Support Services, we have an outreach worker that will be doing some follow-up to their clients and doing census outreach, taking the model of Centro Hispano, which we cannot thank them enough, because they have stepped up a lot and they have been doing direct census outreach and assistance, and have opened up their telephone lines to available 8 to 4 Monday through Friday. So we're using that model that they're using with other nonprofits so that they can reach out to their community members.
It's great when a plan comes together. Thank you, Isabel. Dr. Sanchez, I think you have an image to show some of the events being taken under the Reading School District.
So if we want to show that image while I talk about what the efforts that we've taken at the district. So on June 24th, thanks to the leadership of Dave Myers, who also serves in the Berks County Census Committee and is one of our school board members, along with the support of all of our board members, a resolution was passed for the administration to full force support these efforts. What you see there is a group of census volunteers, enumerator as well, outside of one of our schools, Tyson Shaner Elementary School, in one of our areas that we're trying to improve the response rate. We coordinated during, along with Patricia and Isabel, during the Census Day in Reading, for enumerators to be outside 5 of our elementary schools. I want to share a few additional things that we're doing. So we have access to 13,000 families via our own mobile app. So 13,000 of our families have downloaded that app. We have over 20,000 Facebook followers, and we have approximately 2,000 staff. Let me share why that's important. As part of the Reading Census Awareness Day on July 21st, we send out a message via our mobile app to all of those individuals. We send out a message to all of our 2,000 plus staff. And then we also send a text message to all the families that we have working cell phones for. So that's not such a reliable one, since the numbers change often. Our messages are always sent in English and Spanish. We have a system for all of our elementary schools. We have 13 elementary schools where our teachers and our principals communicate with their families via a Class Dojo, which is another app that parents really, really enjoy. And that's the best way for us to connect with parents. So we sent an English and Spanish message as well there. On our website, I invite you all to visit our website, readingsd.org. We have a pop-up. So before you can go anywhere on our website, you have to read or close this pop-up that's specifically targeting response for people to participate in the census, both in English and in Spanish. And I invite you to go to our website because you'll find links to our social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. In all of those platforms, in English and Spanish, we put a general message about the census. We put a specific message about the support that the census provides for our breakfast and lunch program, our after-school activities, our Title I resources, and then a general message in Spanish. trying to be able to deliver from, in order to be, because there's a trust factor when the district is saying something, to try to deliver what the census is saying, but saying it via our means. So we have additional reminders that are scheduled to go out, like we did on Census Day, throughout the month of August and September. We are planning to send, this is something that I'm excited, we just confirmed it today. We're going to be sending flyers out via the grab and go meals. We are obligated to make sure we provide breakfast and lunch to our students. So via our 19 sites, we will be stuffing the food that we're sending home with a flyer about the census. And last week, we were allowed to return to our radio show. So we provided a radio show, and we were able to go in person. One of the top issues that we addressed, and we've been going from the radio show for 4 months, was the census. And I was the guest speaker that day, and specifically in English and Spanish, made a push for people to go to our website to be able to fill out the census. I talked about this before, 4 days of orientation, individualized orientation. We've invited the census to be at 6 of our elementary schools. So we added 1 compared to what we did for Census Day. And in addition to having people outside of our schools, we're going to be putting a flyer that would go along with the Chromebook. And we've confirmed that the Chromebook, the census page will not be blocked on our Chromebooks. So those are things that we've done and we're looking to do.
Wonderful. A lot of efforts behind the scenes that people don't appreciate till you hear it firsthand, Doctor. Thank you so much. So we all know that we've really had to change our lifestyles in COVID-19 and also dealing with trying to get a census count. And Steve, I think we have another flyer to put up on the screen if perchance an enumerator has to knock on your front door, what kind of safety precautions they're taking, because oftentimes people don't want to respond to a knock or a ring at the doorbell. But if you can walk us through the safety and the precautions that the census workers are taking to get out there and engage the public.
Yeah, absolutely. So enumerators that are visiting houses are required by us, regardless of what the local mandates are required by the federal government to wear face masks. They're required to maintain social distancing. They're provided with hand sanitizer so that they're continually cleansing their hands throughout the day. So when they show up at a doorstep, and in censuses past, they wouldn't, under normal conditions, go into a residence to complete the survey. But if somebody invited them in, they could do so. This time around, that's prohibited completely. So when they show up, they're observing all of the measures that they need to preserve their own health and safety, as well as the household respondent. And oftentimes when people have someone visiting their home, there's concerns as to whether this person's legitimate census employee. And so a couple of things. If it's the flyer that I believe you have up there, is the one how to identify a census enumerator. Mm-hmm. And there's really 4 things you can look for to identify a census enumerator. There's their badge. They should have a badge that they can show to you that has the Census Department of Commerce logo. It has their picture on it. They'll often have a black bag that also has the large logo on it. And they're going to conduct that survey using a handheld device, which is usually a census iPhone. And on the back of that iPhone, there should be a census logo as well. But the 4th thing is that, people are familiar with the census survey, and the questions that they ask are basic questions about, your name, your age, your sex, race, and ethnicity. If you have somebody that comes to your house and they're asking for social security numbers or any kind of payment information, or asking for payment for money for something, or if they're asking to come inside of your home, those would all be red flags that you should definitely just discontinue that conversation and alert authorities. But census employees should be able to alleviate any concerns by showing you any number of things in alignment with the things that I just mentioned. I did also want to mention too, just on your last topic about the things that are being done. The Census Bureau is actually, beneath the United States Department of Commerce, and the Secretary of the U.S. Department of Commerce, Wilbur Ross, has for the past several weeks, had his own initiative where he's been identifying select cities throughout the U.S. That are seeing, as Reading is, a little bit slower progress in reaching those 2010 self-response rates. And he's been reaching out to the leadership in those cities to discuss some solutions and to offer some additional resources. And he recently added the city of Reading to his call list, and he made that call just recently. And because of that call, we were able to appropriate additional CRRs, census response representatives that can attend these MQAs, not only within the lane, but we can pull some resources from even other areas of Pennsylvania if necessary, to ensure that the resources as far as staffing are there to support these events that the Complete Count Committee and the partners have been so diligent in setting up and supporting. And I also just want to mention too that, you know, Corey Nelson is a partnership specialist that works for the United States Census Bureau and has been serving Berks County and the city of Reading from very early on. And she could very easily be here in my place on this call, except that just for technical reasons, you know, their partnership specialists aren't permitted to do these types of things right now. But, you know, Corey works very hard too in supporting these things and still continue and is always sharing the lists and the activities and the events that your Complete Count Committee has been organizing, and it's been phenomenal to watch.
Steve, thank you so much. Any other comments, random comments from our panelists? If not, we will go to the questions. Jesse, I believe, well, first of all, anything you missed out on, we'll still give you an opportunity before we close the program. Dr. Sanchez.
I just would like to reinforce the information that was given there by Steve, that, you know, the census has even responded here following a request from Mayor Moran and Managing Director Cortez to get some of those CRRs into the city. And that's a huge response. That's really going to help out because of all of these events that have been planned and are being scheduled now. Their attendance in the county is going to be very essential in helping to get Reading caught up. But, you know, the biggest cheerleaders in the 3 years that we've been at this, of course, are the three county commissioners who've stood behind this process the whole way. And Kevin, we would be remiss in not saying that the commissioners need to be recognized for the leadership they've done. You know, we found out the other day that the state has committed a little over $4 million for the census publication in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. But, you know, the city of Reading, or I mean, the county of Berks has put up $179,000. If all 67 counties did that, it would make a huge difference in the amount of funding that's being spent on the census in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And again, that impacts the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, which impacts Berks County, which impacts the city. So I just think I need to wrap up my comments with that. And I thank you, Kevin, and the commissioners.
Well, you're most welcome. It was an easy thing for us to decide on, and really not much debate. It's so critically important to our community and our future.
If I may add, I also want to extend my gratitude, my thanks to the commissioners for the leadership being provided to make sure that we're successful. I want to include a few other people in the thanks. The Centro Hispano in Mike Toledo has provided great leadership to make sure that we turn every possible rock to do anything that we collectively can to count all people, especially those Spanish-speaking individuals who, for many reasons, different reasons, are afraid to come forward and be counted. Steve, I think, said something to this effect earlier at the very beginning. The shortened time could be seen as a challenge. To me, I see it as an opportunity. It's forced us to become creative and figure out how to work more efficiently as a group to get to the goal. So I look forward to the challenge. I look forward to celebrating in 6.5 weeks when we've surpassed the numbers from 2010.
Fourth down, a yard to go, and we're down by 3. Right? Okay, Jesse, questions from the public?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Barnhart. We have 2 comments from the public so far. Jess Royer from Spring Township. thank you for working to ensure the 2020 census won't be forgotten within the context of other pressing matters. What is the deadline for responses, and how can private citizens help continue to push towards the most accurate overall count possible?
One of the panelists like to take that?
I'll take it. Well, the deadline is September 30th, 2020. And the best thing that someone can do is, like Paul used the word cheerleader, let everybody know the importance of the census, help people complete the census. You can go to my2020census.com and complete it. Talk census for the next 6.5 weeks, and everyone counts. And again, throw that historical portion into it if people have any arguments, because really at the end of the day, we all count and we all need to be counted.
And this is Steve Shope. I would also agree too that, sometimes the undercounts that are seen in certain populations aren't because people didn't respond or a household didn't respond. It's because they responded and omitted certain people from their survey. It's very important that if you are going to fill out the survey, you've got to account for every person who was living in your household on April 1st of 2020. And that could be a newborn baby. We know that children under the age of 5 are the largest undercounted population in America, simply because they're just omitted from forms. And whether it's intentional or not, it's important that the small children are counted, because as it was alluded to earlier by the commissioner, it's still $2,100 per person, including the baby.
Yes.
You have a brother-in-law who's out of work and he's been staying with you a little while. You may not consider him part of your household, but if he was staying with you on April 1st, he should be counted. I mean, there's just, be thorough, count for everybody, and don't leave anybody out. If they were there, count them.
Thank you, Isabel. Thank you, Steve. Another question, Jesse?
Yes. Sherry Ash, Maiden Creek Township. Hi, BBC. I got mine in the mail the first week. I brought it in from the mailbox, went online with my cheapy phone to complete it. Easy peasy, less than 3 minutes and it was done. You can do this, peoples. I don't answer my door for anyone, so this was a great option for me.
Thank you, Sherry Ash, for pushing the message out there. And we need more people like you in the community to help us get this accomplished. Again, Herculean effort coming down to the wire. We have a great core group here with the city, the school district, places like the Hispanic Center. It goes on. And I would be remiss, Steve brought her name up, but Corey Nelson, she coordinates our weekly meetings that we've been meeting virtually. We were meeting, I think, once a month before COVID. We're meeting every week virtually, and really just exchange of ideas and concepts and pushing things forward, helping Heather Adams with the media and doing things like that really gets us across it. They say it takes dozens of times till you develop a good habit, so maybe it takes us several dozen times to get the message out to people that the census is so vitally important to complete. And I do believe that in the areas that are undercounted, under 50%, there will be an additional questionnaire coming out, a paper form, which will be one of 7 notifications that includes postcards and actual questionnaire. So listen, I don't beg for much, but I'm begging each and every one of you in Reading and Berks County, get out there, do your part, fill out this census, because we are all going to be a greater community collectively together coming out of COVID-19. And we want to be stronger as a people, as a community, and also financially, because, hey, I say it and I'll say it again, we send that hard-earned money down to Washington, D.C. Guess what? We want it to turn back around and come back to Reading and Berks County. That's what this is all about. So thank you to my panelists so much. I think this is really informative for the community. And our last slide will be Isabel's contact information. We don't want to shut anyone out who may have a question who did not get a chance to answer it. So this will be up here. Isabel Monterosa, imonterosa@albright.edu. She is definitely available. If you think of small groups that are going to be having some participatory events that Isabel and Delcy can get to, or the Reading group, please let us know. We will filter that out. Obviously, our team will be properly masked and hand sanitizer, and just really want to get out there and help the school district, help the city, and help our community grow stronger with every count. So thank you to everyone.